some reason, let's see if I can get the camera to come over here. I'm sorry if you are online. I had several students tell me they were going to have to watch today because they were sick. And I said I would start right at 9:30, and I'm running late because I had a student in my office that was asking really important questions. So I apologize for being late, but I just lost track of time. I'm a few minutes late, and I actually got here like 3 minutes after. So not terrible. I'm going to pass around a sign-in sheet for the career fair. If you would write your name down, and I'll give the points right after class. Let's see, career. So tell me how long your name, print it so I can read it, and then how much time you spent. I'll believe you. I was going to check video. I was going to check your photos. But I'll use the honor system and choose to believe everybody's absolutely 100% honest. All right, so why is this not launching? Let's see. And right. So today we need to talk about sales promotion. Hopefully this will come up. There we go. Oops, wrong one. I apparently clicked on the wrong PowerPoint. Try this again. Is that one? Start that one. Okay. So, sales promotion within IMC. So a sales promotion is an inducement that offers an extra value to either the sales force, the distributors, or the ultimate consumer with the intent to produce or create immediate sales. And this has been a huge factor in marketing for a long time. Since sales are the lifeblood of the economy, approximately 70% of our nation's GDP is sales, and it's also the lifeblood of business. Obviously, if you don't have sales, you don't stay in business. If you don't generate revenue, you're not staying in business. So it's important, right? There are two types of sales promotions that we can do. We can have consumer-oriented sales promotions, and then we can have trade-oriented sales promotions. So consumer-oriented promotions include sampling, couponing, premiums, contests, sweepstakes, refunds, rebates, bonus packs, price off, loyalty programs, event marketing. Trade-oriented includes dealer contests, incentives, allowances, point of purchase displays, trade shows, and cooperative advertising. And we'll talk about each of these and the advantages and disadvantages of each of these today as we sort of go through the material. And I'm going to ask you to come up with, as part of the duck hunt for today, so I brought the ducks. As part of the duck hunt for today, I'm going to ask you what are some of the advantages and disadvantages that you can think of each of these types of promotions. Promotion is not without controversy, and there are, lots of companies that view themselves as being exclusive and view sales promotion as sort of a bad thing. And the more exclusive you are, the less likely you are maybe to use it. Things like Rolex don't use a whole lot of promotion. So sort of start thinking about why they wouldn't do that. If you are watching this live streamed and you want points for the duck hunt, you can text your answers to me, since I know that some of you are out there, at 405. I'll put this behind me. 405-414-7054. That way I can give you points for participating in the class participation if you're not able to be here today. So, the growth of sales promotion. what has led to this growing use of sales promotion? Again, if you went back in time and sort of thinking about the history of marketing, and one of the things that I talk about in my introductory class or my principles class of marketing is that marketing as a human activity is an ancient thing. As an academic discipline, it has its origins at the beginning sort of the 20th century or the late 19th century and the rise of the Industrial Revolution. So as an activity, as a human activity, marketing has been around for a long time. We don't know when the first societies were formed, right? We have evidence of this in the anthropological and archaeological record of when man becomes a sort of social creature and bands together and starts to form societies. But as soon as we do that, and as soon as we see the emergence of individuals engaging in sort of specialization within the community or within the group, there are those that go out and protect the group. There are those that are involved in hunting for the group and gathering for the group and planting crops and things like that. And as soon as we start to see the specialization, we start to see the emergence of marketing. We don't know where that happened, the first, sort of community to exist. We think that probably happened, in the Fertile Crescent where man emerged. And we start to see the practice of marketing, but not necessarily the academic discipline of marketing. So historically, with regard to these early communities, and even up into about the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, if you had a product, you could probably sell it because goods were scarce. And people needed things, right? You needed food, you needed clothing, you needed shelter, and those sort of basic necessities of life were all that was offered. And so you could sell your goods, pretty much for what you wanted. But once we see an abundance of material, and not just necessities, but luxuries or beyond what we just need to survive, you start to see the need to attract customers, right? So again, if you go back to my principles class, if you took my principles class, we talk about sort of the eras of marketing. The first era being sort of, if you build it, they will come. That's called the production philosophy of marketing. If I have something, you will buy it because you need it. I have chickens, you have a cow, and a lot of these early examples are barter, right? So you need eggs, I need milk, we barter for that. Now, we've moved well beyond that into, I can now engage with students who are in the virtual space and communicate with them on this device. And there are lots of different ones of these devices out there, right? So we start to see the need for sales promotion when you get that greater number of goods and services in the marketplace. Historically, again, going back to this production time, all of the power resided with the manufacturer because they set the initial price in the marketplace. And retailers and wholesalers had to accept that price. And if there's only one producer or a very few producers of a good or service, that gives the manufacturer a lot of power. As you get to have more and more people entering into the market, and you start seeing retailers become more dominant, the power has shifted. And this is what I call the Walmart effect. Walmart was really sort of one of the first to become really big enough to flip the power dynamic. Now, there were other retailers, you could argue, that did this, Woolworths, the five and dime stores before, but Walmart really becomes this behemoth, and they flip the power dynamic. Again, historically, retailers went to producers, they bought goods, and they paid the price point that the manufacturer asked for, or the wholesaler did it, and then the retailers went to the wholesaler. And so the power flew from the producer to the retailer, Walmart becomes big enough that they then are able to go and tell manufacturers, if you want to sell at Walmart, this is the price we're willing to pay, because we have such a huge volume. At one point in time, and I think it's now dropped, but up until just a number of years ago, Walmart was the largest seller of virtually everything. They were the largest seller of textiles in the United States, the largest seller of soap, laundry detergent, hair products, and even at one point in time, they became the largest retailer of diamonds. That's not something that you generally think of but they were the largest retailer of diamonds. Now, some of that has shifted because Amazon has become such a dominant force in the marketplace, right? And if you look at the wheel of retailing, you see that businesses rise and come to prominence, and then they may fall. But Walmart really starts this. So if you wanted to do business with Walmart, you had to go to Bentonville, Arkansas. You had to have an office there, and you went to Walmart, and they told you what they were going to pay. There's an interesting case study called The Man Who Said No to Walmart. And ultimately, he then said yes to Walmart, and it was Snapper. Walmart is one of the largest sellers of lawn mowing equipment, right? And they sell lawnmowers at Walmart. And Walmart had figured out, and this was like now 15 years ago, which is ancient history in terms of marketing. Again, a lot of the times I wish I taught history, because we know what happened, in the Civil War, and I wouldn't have to update my PowerPoint presentation every semester as the information changed. But this is, like, again, in marketing terms, ancient history. About 15 years ago, Walmart decided, this has increased because of inflation, obviously, that the average consumer wanted to pay about $100 for a lawnmower. And at $100, what kind of quality of lawnmower are you getting? Well, they figured that people used it for 1 or 2 or maybe 3 seasons, and then when they went out in the spring and they pulled the cord to get it to start and it didn't, they just buy another lawnmower. Snapper manufactures lawnmowers, and they weren't willing to meet a price point that Walmart could sell that product at around $100. And they said no. They decided they weren't going to sell to Walmart. And there was this case study, and it was called The Man Who Said No to Walmart. Ultimately, Snapper now sells to Walmart. So the power of retailers in the channel to reverse that power distribution and demand prices means that sales promotion has grown in importance. There's been a decline, and this is particularly true with your generation. My generation was maybe the last to be, I'm a Gen Xer, to be really brand loyal to things. They had this idea that, I was a Ford or a Chevy or a Dodge. When I was growing up, people had very distinct ideas. I grew up in a farming community about which pickup was best. And there were jokes, and people actually told jokes about, like, what does Ford stand for? Fix and repair daily, things like that. And you were either sort of brand loyal to Ford for years and years and years. I was fairly brand loyal to Ford. I had a series of Ford F-150 pickups, and the Ford F-150 is the #1 selling pickup in America for something like the last 15 years in a row. So there's a sort of brand loyalty. Your generation is less brand loyal than previous generations. I can remember my brother lost his wallet when he was in junior high school, and he had this wallet that my mother had bought for him at, I think it wasn't Macy's at the time. It was Foley's. That was in this part of the country, there was Foley's, and Foley's was bought out by Macy's. So she had bought him this wallet, a leather wallet, that was a name brand called Yves Saint Laurent. Most of you have probably never even heard of this brand, right? It's still around, but it was a very popular brand, particularly in this part of the country, among people, because it had sort of a French sounding name, and that sounds exotic, I guess. So my brother had this wallet. It got stolen from him in junior high school. So he wanted another wallet. So I went out to Walmart and I bought him a wallet. Now, this is not an article of clothing or accessory for men that most people see. It's not like a purse. At that point in time, was for females, right? Purses are something that is an article of clothing, and I have to change sort of my lecture because historically speaking, men didn't carry purses. That has changed as a result of, sociological factors that have led to less of a stigma of that. And now, I remember the first time I had a friend who was, like carrying what I call a merce, and I was like, I'm not going to be seen with you, right? But that's no longer the stigma in the current contemporary era that we live in. But historically, women carried purses, and you could see the brand on that article of clothing. A wallet for most men is not something that you look at. So I bought my brother this wallet at Walmart, and I gave it to him, and he's like, "Where did this come from?" And I was like, "I got it at Walmart, Ral." He said, He's like, "I can't carry this." Like, my friends will say, "You're a Walmart shopper, Ral. There's a blue light." You all don't even remember this. There's a blue light special on aisle 12. They used to have these, specials where they would, have blue light specials or whatever. And if you ran over to aisle 12, there was something that was on. And he was just absolutely horrified that I would think about that. Your generation and most people now have a decreased in brand loyalty. We don't tend to have as much loyalty to a given brand as we have in the past, maybe. There's less of a stigma associated with buying things at things like Walmart. And there was, when I was a kid growing up, there was a huge stigma. Everybody had to go to Walmart, but you didn't want to, you didn't wear clothes from Walmart. Certainly that was a big stigma. Now Walmart has pretty good clothing and nobody cares, right? That's just not as obvious as it used to be. There's an increase in promotional sensitivity. We have trained consumers to like promotions. There's been a proliferation of brands. So again, historically, if you go back in time, if we think about cars, Ford was the first one to manufacture a mass-produced car that was accessible to the average person. And other people entered the market, the Dodge brothers, and we get a proliferation of brands. Now there's lots of brands. Again, going back in time, when I was a kid growing up, Japanese cars were viewed, when I was a small child, as being sort of the cheap model. They were what people who didn't have a lot of money buy, because American cars were the dominant and the best made in the world. The Japanese learned, they improved their technology, and now, the Japanese cars are generally viewed as being maybe higher quality or better reliability than American cars in some terms. Short-term focus, particularly as companies have had to report earnings, and this affects stock price. This focus, and this is something that has been very, very criticized by other countries. Businesses in other countries take a much longer approach to things, but in the United States, we have a tendency to have this very short-term focus. And if you're focused on quarter-over-quarter sales growth, you might use sales promotion. And this happened in the company that I worked for, the American Education Corporation. Our boss was we had taken the company public before I got there, and he wanted to take the company back private and sell it so that he could get, he had all these shares of stock, and that was his basically retirement plan, was to take the company private and sell it and, get the company that bought it to, basically buy all of his stock so that he could retire. And as a result, because we were a publicly traded company and we were SEC reporting, we had to file every quarter 10Q, and at the end of the year, 10K. And these give, sales and earnings. And if you're focused on that, sales promotion is one way of increasing sales. We did that a lot. He would want to discount our product so that we could increase sales goals at the end of a quarter so that we would have better looking numbers as he was trying to sell the company to somebody. An increase in accountability. One thing that sales promotion does in many respects is that its results are easy to measure. if you undertake a marketing campaign and an advertising campaign, it can be really difficult to measure that. Particularly in the short term, because it's hard to get a one-for-one measurement of, for example, a television advertising campaign. But you can measure promotion. If you send out coupons, you can measure how many coupons come back with a great deal of accuracy. How many people click through if you're offering a sales promotion online. Competition, as more and more people enter the marketplace, obviously the competition becomes greater, and sales promotion allows you a way of maybe gaining market share. And then, of course, the growth of digital marketing has led to an increase in sales promotion. So two types of sales promotion: consumer franchise building. This is really building brand equity, awareness, and loyalty, focusing on long terms. What can we do rather than just getting consumers to try our product once and then go back to their habits? What can we do to sort of build brand loyalty versus non-franchise building or non-FB sales promotion, which is just immediate sales and doesn't provide a lot of information about a brand's unique features and benefits. Now, a lot of brands and a lot of products, particularly consumer packaged products, don't have a lot of distinguishing features between them and something else. If you think about, for example, consumer packaged goods in terms of cereal, there's lots of cereals out there, and they don't necessarily have any difference between them and a competitor's brand. If you like Frosted Flakes, there are the, sort of store branded Frosted Flakes that pretty much taste exactly the same. The one that I can think of that's different, is there any consumer packaged good that you can think really there's a big difference between the name brand and the store brand? It's not generic because they may be store branded or off brand products. There are very few. So what is a totally generic product? If it just says, for example, on the label, green beans and nothing else, that's a totally generic product. Very few of those left anymore. Most of them are now store brand, which means that if you shop at Walmart, it's the what brand? The Great Value brand. As opposed to, can you think of one store brand or generic, if you can think of generic, that there really is a big difference between the name brand and the store brand? I can think of one product that there's a huge difference between. Actually, I could too. The what?
The Pop-Tarts.
Okay, I've never tried Pop-Tarts. Why do you think there's a big difference between? So Pop-Tarts are this sort of flaky pastry that has a fruit-like filling. I'm not sure how much actual fruit is in there as opposed to, sugar.
Yeah. Well, it's just like there's less icing compared to the regular one. There's not enough filling in it. It just tastes really dry compared to the normal Pop-Tart.
Okay. Lauren says, who's watching online, toilet paper. There's a big difference between the Great Value brand. I don't know. We use in my business, because I own a bed and breakfast, or my family owns a bed and breakfast. We go through an inordinate amount of toilet paper, and it does get expensive. So we use the Sam's brand of toilet paper, which competes with Charmin. I'm not sure there's a lot of difference, but I think historically, yes, there was a lot of difference between sort of the bare bones toilet paper and Charmin brand of toilet paper. Anything else that you can think of? What?
Just food. I feel like food is often different.
How, which, I need a specific food that you think is different, because I'm going to tell you, if you open the Green Giant can, you think cereal is.
I tried Cinnamon Toast Crunch and then off-brand Cinnamon Toast Crunch. Oh, thank you. And I thought it was off.
I think the chips are different too.
The chips, like potato chips.
I don't know, the Doritos and the Cheetos.
Okay.
I feel like they're very similar just because now even off-brand has organic and natural, so I don't know.
If you like lactose, so most people who are over about the age of 5 or 6 are slightly lactose intolerant. And if you like, and I like milk, I really, really like milk, but I can drink, I'm not hugely lactose intolerant because I can eat lots and lots of cheese and not have a problem. I can eat lots and lots of sour cream or things like that and not have a problem. But if I drink just pure milk, it's like I can have 1 glass of milk and then the second, and I don't just drink 1 glass or I don't just eat 1 bowl of cereal. I'm one of these that like, if I start, I'm practically going to finish the box. And I'll, for like 30 minutes after I do that, I'll have horrible, horrible stomach pain. I'm not like one of my friends that was in the doctoral program. He was the other JD. So when I was going through the doctoral program, there was another lawyer in the program with me. And that tells you how bad it is to be a lawyer, right? That you're willing to go get a PhD to avoid having to practice law. He was horribly lactose intolerant. His grandmother would not accept this. Like she just believed that he was faking it. And so she would find ways of like sneaking butter. And I was like, I didn't believe him until literally one day we're at this restaurant, having a beer after going to class. And he like said, no butter on the hamburger bun. He's like, no cheese, no butter. I just want like the hamburger plain and dry. And somehow they managed to he looked at the top bun, but didn't look at the bottom, and they had butter on the bottom bun. And within 3 minutes, he was violently ill. I mean, violently ill. That's how bad a reaction he had to lactose. I'm not like anywhere near that. So they now make this lactose-free milk. And the way they do that is they just add an enzyme to the milk, which basically splits the sugar, the lactose sugar, into 2 different sugars. And there's not any difference between the Great Value brand and the Fairlife, which Fairlife has a better bottle. It's got a prettier package. But in terms of the taste and quality, there's not much difference. There's not much difference between green beans, between the Great Value brand and the Libby's brand of green bean. So you think there's a big difference between chips? Okay. Maybe the stuff that they put on the chips. The one that I can, go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say, I think the only thing that I will always buy off-brand is medicine, because it has to be, like, if you look at the ingredients. it's
It has to
exact
be
same
exactly
thing,
the
yeah.
same thing. And a lot of products, like Listerine, if you use that, they have the Great Value brand, and it's exactly the same ingredients. And the flavor is pretty much, the original Listerine was just god-awful. The store brand is god-awful. Now they've got the mint flavors and things like that, which are pretty close. They're slightly different, but the active ingredients are the same.
Yeah.
The active ingredients between, most generic medicines and the name brand are exactly the same. It's just maybe the shape of the pill or something like that there's not a lot of difference. The one that I can think of, I love macaroni and cheese, and none of the Walmart brands of macaroni and cheese taste anything similar to the Kraft products. They just don't. There's just no comparison. But most of the things, a lot of them are very, very similar.
Do you like Velveeta or Kraft better?
I like the Kraft macaroni and cheese. If I'm gonna have I make really good macaroni and cheese, homemade macaroni and cheese that I use 5 cheeses in, and that's my favorite. But if I'm just like starving and need something quickly, it's like Kraft is my favorite. Although Velveeta is really good as well. But the Great Value brand of shells and cheese or whatever it is, it does not. It's got like a funny aftertaste, to their product.
Even the cheese sticks that you can buy, I've noticed, because I like cheese sticks, and they have like a Great Value brand of cheese sticks, and it's not the
You
same.
mean like the mozzarella stick?
Oh,
Okay,
yeah.
so
They don't feel the same, like it's in my group.
they don't, and they
Could
don't.
just be me, but.
Well, the texture's not even. I think they use cheaper cheese, and so insofar as that powdered cheese can be, cheese, Kraft is by far the better brand, I think. So, consumer-oriented sales promotion. Your text tells you that it's been in use for more than 100 years. I would say that it's probably been more than that. I mean, it's hard to get exact figures on a lot of this stuff, but for at least 100 years, The objectives of consumer-oriented sales promotion are to obtain trial and repurchase of a product, to increase consumption of an already established brand. So if you have a new consumer packaged good that you're launching, trying to get consumers to try it or to repurchase it is one objective. Increasing consumption of your established brand, defending your current customers against competition. So preventing them from switching. Switching costs among consumer packaged goods is minimal. It doesn't take a lot. Oh, the other one I can think of that there's a big difference. Q-tips. There's a huge difference in Q-tips and the off-brand. Targeting specific demographics or psychographics, and then enhancing your integrated marketing communication and building brand equity are the goals of consumer-oriented sales promotion. So what kind of techniques? Each of these techniques has advantages and disadvantages. So sampling. This is the most effective way, particularly with consumer packaged goods, to get people to try it. Overwhelmingly, if you give people a sample, they will try it. Why is that? Why will Americans? It's free. So
Like Sam's Club is so fun to go to in sampling time.
it used to be better. They used to have far more. You used to be able to have an entire lunch at Sam's if you went after. I always go during historically what they call the business hours. Now they call it Prime. Anybody can buy a Prime membership and get in before 10 o'clock. They open to everybody at 10 o'clock. But before they used to open, and since COVID they've changed, they used to open to business members at 7 o'clock in the morning. And now you can get pickup, but you can't get into the store at 7 o'clock. The earliest that they open is 8, but that's 2 hours before. I always go right at 8 o'clock because I have a business. I've got to get my supplies for the week. And if you go at 10 o'clock, it becomes an utter nightmare, right? There's grandma in the cart in front of you that is like parked, I don't know, like they park in the middle of the aisle. And I'm trying to get my pallet through and they're, constantly in the way. So I go right at 8 o'clock. But if you used to go around noon, they knew that that's when the most people would be there. And they had all of the people out sampling. And they had literally hundreds of people going through and trying samples because they would have samples of, I don't know, probably 10 or 15 items. They've now limited that and they have found ways of limiting even the amount of, let's see if I can switch this, the amount of samples. So people would go through and get multiple samples. So they've now come up with a way of limiting this so that you can't quite go through lunch, and they don't actually offer the cooked food. So they still have people out there doing that, but it's called the Friosk. It's estimated, by the way, I heard this statistic probably 5 years ago. I was listening to NPR on the way in, that 50% of the jobs in existence at that time, they said, would become obsolete in the next 10 to 15 years. And I thought, that can't be true. And then I went to Sam's that day and they had started implementing, that was the first time they had implemented this product. So there used to be all of these people that would hand out samples. Now they can do this. And it limits the amount of the sample that you get because you have to scan your Sam's card to get the sample and it's only going to give you one, right? Like one little thing. So you can't do the whole, I'm going to try 15 of the chicken nuggets or whatever. So sampling, why do we try it? I think another reason, it's not just that it's free, but overwhelmingly, we subscribe to what I can only call a middle-class morality in this country by the vast majority of people, which is if something's given to you and it has any useful purpose, you don't waste it. We hate waste. It's why people inevitably, and how many of you do this? I do this all the time, I don't eat everything at lunch because particularly in Oklahoma, restaurants have a tendency to serve huge portions. They've gotten better, but Oklahomans like their vittles and they, increase the food, and I can't always eat everything that they serve you. And I inevitably say I want a, to go or a carry out box, and then it will sit in my refrigerator until it grows mold because I just don't want to waste food. We don't like waste. And so consumers will use a sample because they don't want to waste it. It's been given to you, it's free, and I don't want to waste it. So sampling techniques, going door to door, direct mail, or in store, all of these are expensive compared to other things. Door to door is particularly expensive. Now, a lot of companies found ways historically in the past to reduce the cost. So Avon is something that has historically been sold door to door. And they had all of these Avon representatives out there. And my grandmother's best friend was an Avon representative. And the real reason she did it was because she just wanted to get free products. She didn't make much money off of it. She made a little, but she would go door to door, and Avon would also have samples. So they would leave the book and they'd also offer you a sample. Avon reduced the cost of that sample by not paying. I mean, if you're gonna have somebody out going door to door and they're salaried, that's expensive. Avon reduced it by doing what? Well, Avon representatives, it was a pure commission-based thing. So if you're going door to door, it's on your time, and what you're hoping to get is commission sales out of that. But it's still expensive in terms of you're having to come up with a package for this product, for the sample. Most things you can't just hand out without having some kind of protection around it. Avon, for example, was famous for giving out samples of cream, face cream, or perfumes that they would carry, and they would put those in these little tiny vials, and they were glass, and they had a plastic topper. That's expensive. Mailing was another way that you sent out samples, and in the past they used to do a lot of this. I remember in the 1980s and 1990s, we would get like voluminous amounts of samples. Every time they would come out with a new laundry soap, they would send you a little box, like the kind that you would buy if you went to a laundromat, in the mail. That's expensive. Not only do you have to come up with a special little package, because you don't want to send everybody a big box of Tide, that would be, cost prohibitive. It would be this little package that would go through the mail, and you had the cost of the mail. And then in store, historically, again, before we had the kiosk, it's expensive because you're having to have somebody that's, being paid a salary to stand there and hand out these samples. On package, where it's attached to another product so that you'll buy it. So, they would give you, along with toothpaste, if they came out with maybe something like a new product in terms of mouthwash, they'd give you a little vial or something like that or the toothpaste along with the mouthwash. On package, again, you have to come up with the packaging, and that's all expensive, but it does guarantee that people will try it. Now, historically, again, what happens is after they try something, most people revert back to their preferred brand. It can be very short-lived. Coupons, the oldest method used since 1895. This includes, again, historically, this is being reduced greatly by the fact that newspapers around the country are going broke. Lots of small towns no longer even have a newspaper. Guthrie, my hometown, barely has one. It's gone. I don't think we even have a daily. We used to have one daily newspaper in Guthrie and a weekly newspaper. I think we're down to basically, it's now the one in town is a weekly or bi-weekly or something like that. There used to be all kinds of inserts in the newspaper. Again, this is expensive to print. Direct mail, on package coupons that you can peel off and give to the clerk. And now, of course, it's become somewhat cheaper because online. It's easy to design a coupon, put it out there online, have a QR code, and let people scan it and open and get the coupon or discount. Premiums. Offering an item or service for free or low price. So free premiums include small gifts that are included in the product package or sent to consumers who mail it in with a proof of purchase often. What do you need to have a successful premium, do you think?
A rewards program?
Okay, a rewards program, that's one way. If you offer a small gift in exchange for purchasing a product, what do you think that gift should be?
Another product?
Well, yeah, it's gonna be another product, but what? What do you think is the most useful in terms of getting people to buy your product? If you look at this example, so self-liquidating premiums, I'd give you the example that the text talks about, which is Marlboro gear. So I was a smoker for many, many years and I quit. I just quit cold turkey. I didn't try any of the Wellbutrin or the Chantix or anything like that. Really, really hard to do. But Marlboro is a very old brand of cigarette, not necessarily the best example, I guess, since I teach ethics. You know, we should encourage people to not smoke because it's bad for you. Almost everybody I knew who went to law school at the time I went to law school started. If you didn't smoke before law school, you started in law school because of the stress. It's a horrible habit, really hard to kick. But Marlboro gives you this branded gear that, what's the Marlboro brand? What's sort of their iconic image? No, that's Camel.
Oh,
Camel cigarettes are Camels, right? So what is the Marlboro brand?
Isn't it like red?
Okay, it's red, but what is their sort of iconic image that's associated with the Marlboro brand? God, this is, nobody knows because nobody, like, I used to, when I first started teaching in Oklahoma, I would say, how many of you grew up on a farm or ranch, which I did at least part of the time, because my parents were divorced. My father owns a cattle ranch in northern New Mexico. So I grew up on a cattle ranch part of the time. And most of my students, when I first started teaching many, many, many years ago, had some experience. Even if they didn't directly, they had grandparents that were involved in farming. Now, most of you probably have grandparents that are not much older than I am. And so they don't, you know, lots of people in my generation didn't have any experience living on a ranch. Maybe, but like I said, they had grandparents that had farms or ranches or things like that. The iconic image of Marlboro was the Marlboro Man, and it's a Western type image that they promote. Their gear promotes that sort of identity. So I think the thing that you have to have, premiums, this free gift, if you want it to be really effective and you want it to help develop brand image, if, for example, Marlboro gave out pencils, which is something that people used to give out, politicians particularly, when they were running for office, would give out pencils. Nobody actually gives out, I mean, nobody uses a pencil anymore, right? I mean, unless you have a math class, because you've got your computer, why would you use a pencil? But politicians used to give out, as they go door to door in campaign, they'd give out pencils with their, you know, sort of, you know, vote for Joe Biggs, County Commission District 3. Well, if Marlboro was giving out a premium, which is free pencils, that has, other than people who quit smoking, oftentimes will like chew on a pencil or a pen or things like that, because they can hold it the same way they did with the cigarette. It doesn't have a lot of congruence with the product, but the Marlboro branded t-shirts and hats and things like that that have this congruence with the image and the iconography of the Marlboro Man and sort of that Western rugged heritage are congruent with the product itself. So I think if you really want it to be effective, what you have to have is you have to have some congruence with the product. If you're selling perfume or cosmetics and you're offering somebody, I don't know, shoelaces, that's not congruent with the product, right? But if you're selling cosmetics and you offer them a premium of cologne or something like that, that goes along with it, that's congruent with the product.
So does it matter if it's like if they do that at the point of purchase or like later on? Cause I know like Chevy, if you own like one of their trucks and it hits 100,000 miles, you get like a bunch of free like Chevy stuff. Does that make any difference of like point of purchase or?
I think one of the things that you find with
Is that
almost
like
everything is that is loyalty. But I think one of the things that you find with most, particularly promotional things, is that the immediacy is more important. I mean, one of the things that's hard is to have something that causes a delay. Now, it's not that it's absolutely ineffective, but generally people respond to things that happen right away or that are closely related temporally to the time of purchase, right? So what you see is that we've been inundated with surveys. Every time you get a receipt anymore, they'll give you a number and a code to go take a survey. And a lot of those surveys, particularly with Walmart, they offer you in exchange for completing the survey, or they have in the past. I haven't seen them do it recently, although admittedly I haven't paid that much attention to the receipts that I get. It's the chance at winning something in the future. The more immediate the reward, the more likely people are to do it. And the less likelihood of something, I mean, you're gonna be entered for a chance to win a $5,000 shopping spree or credit at Walmart. Well, how many people are gonna win it? How many people shop at Walmart? What are my odds? Not good. So am I gonna do the survey? It's less likely. Self-liquidating premiums. So they get the good that they're gonna use as a premium or service, and the consumer pays some or all of the cost plus handling, and it can reinforce this brand positioning. So again, the Marlboro gear. So they get, a bulk of caps and t-shirts and things like that that all have the Marlboro brand. They have images of this sort of cowboy iconography on it, and it can reinforce that brand positioning. Contests and sweepstakes. These are popular, and the contest requires some skill or ability. And sweepstakes, it's just, pure chance. With regard to sweepstakes, you can't require purchase. So there has to be a way for people to enter the sweepstake without actually purchasing. So historically, for example, McDonald's has done a lot of these, and you can, write to McDonald's and get an entry form. Most people get it through a purchase of something, but in theory, you can write to them and get the ability to participate in the sweepstakes. So contests, some ability to compete on the basis of skill. These may do little to contribute to the brand. Lots of stores use them, lots of people use them, but again, what does it do to your overall brand? Now, in Texas, I visit Texas a lot because that's where my brother lives. In Plano, there's a chain of supermarkets that we don't have here, and they're constantly using the Monopoly. You play the Monopoly sweepstakes or contest, they give you little pieces that you're supposed to put on the board. Now they've decided to go to virtual, and I don't think it's nearly as much fun. For example, my niece was she loved it when she was 7 years old. She loved to play the Monopoly, because she liked to peel off the stickers and actually put them on the board. They've now gone to doing this virtually, which is far less entertaining for a little kid to participate in. But what's the problem with doing Monopoly at a Tom Thumb grocery store? Anybody see the problem there? whose brand are you actually building? I think you're building Monopoly's brand. But, you know, my brother would go to Tom Thumb because his daughter liked to get these little stupid Monopoly pieces and put them on the board, and you have the opportunity to win, you know, a big grand prize. Although there were lots of smaller prizes that you could get for playing. But again, when you think of Tom Thumb grocery stores, do you think of Monopoly? I don't know, right? What if the contest involved, you know, ability to run through the store and grab everything you could in 3 minutes? They used to have a game show that did this. They would get people to take a shopping cart and you had 90 seconds to run through the store, and whoever filled up the most in the shopping cart, do you remember this game show? And the one who got, you know, it's kind of amazing how some people are very strategic in what they'll go for. The high, you know, what you really want is you want to get the highest price items that take up the least amount of space in the shopping cart and that are easiest to get. That seems congruent with the retail image more so than maybe Monopoly, which is about buying real estate rather than buying products. Refunds and rebates, these are cash back with a proof of purchase. So I wear contact lenses. Almost everybody is slightly myopic anymore because we all spend an inordinate amount of time looking at these screens. So I would venture to guess that a lot of you in here are like me, you wear contacts. Now, I do think the refunds and rebates work with regard to contacts because once you find a brand, you are maybe less likely to switch, and it's nice to get the refund or rebate. And it can maybe generate trial, but how many of you wear contacts? 1, 2, okay. So only 2 other people in here wear contacts. Contacts are one of those things that like, they either fit really well or they don't. If they don't, they're like shards of glass in your eyeball. And so like I've tried because of a rebate that I would get, but if it didn't fit well, it didn't lead to brand loyalty. Bonus packs, getting an extra amount at the regular price. People like that. They like to think they're getting a bargain. So if it says 25% more, that can be an incentive to buy the brand that you normally choose, but maybe buy more of it at one time. Loyalty programs. This is one of the fastest growing techniques, and this one is one of the ones that actually does build brand loyalty. If you participate in a company's loyalty programs, and American Airlines was one of the first to really do this. And by the way, I watched a whole little program about how American loses on almost every single seat on an airline. They lose money. How are they still in business? Well, it's their loyalty program, because you get points for American by using the American Airlines shopping, by using the American Airlines credit card, or by shopping at certain retailers or businesses who can award you American Airlines points. American Airlines sells those points to those businesses, and it's basically like their own sort of form of currency that they control the value of, and they make huge amounts of money off of basically a financial product. And it does build brand loyalty. Why? Because if you have the ability to control who you spend it with, you're more likely to stay with that program because you get something for it, right? So how many of you are members of some kind of airline loyalty program or hotel loyalty program, right? I have a tendency to, because I have so many points with Hilton, I have a tendency to stick with Hilton branded properties if I have any ability to select that product. Now, with some of my travel, I don't, because I travel for the university, and we either have to stay at the conference hotel, which I have no ability to select, or I have to use the state, per diem rate if I go off of the conference hotel because it's already booked or whatever. And so I don't have a lot of choice. But with regard to my own personal and travel, I have a tendency to switch. I have a tendency to stay loyal because I'm building points and I get free rooms with Hilton, because that's the one that I've chosen to do. Event marketing and sponsorship. This is where you actually either hold your own events, and lots of companies are doing this. They're creating their own events, or you sponsor events. What is necessary for this? Again, I think you have to have some congruence between the product and the event. Rolex sponsors lots of events. I think one of the reasons that I got my job here at UCO, other than the fact that there are just not very many PhDs in marketing, and there are generally more jobs than there are candidates on the market in any given year, because the number of baby boomers that are retiring out of the professorate is really reaching a rapid pace, and the number of PhDs that are pumped out of marketing programs is highly restricted for a variety of reasons, not the least of which is you don't have to take a marketing class. One of the things that's led to marketing professors being able to demand higher salaries than political science professors is the fact that nobody ever has to take a principles of marketing class unless you are a business major. So you've already sort of limited the pool, right? That means that we don't need an enormous number of graduate students to teach in this program. Unlike English or political science, where every single college or university across the nation has to have a certain number of people teaching English, because you're required to take 2 English courses, 11, 13, and I think 12, 13 here is what they are. It's Comp 1 and Comp 2. Well, what does that mean for big schools like OU, who have huge numbers of freshmen that they have to teach? Everybody has to take these 2 courses. You take it in your first year. They hire a whole lot of graduate students in the form of PhD candidates. So the OU English department will admit huge numbers of people, knowing that only about 50% of them are going to graduate. But even if 50% of them graduate, that's a lot. So let's suppose that OU, I think they admit in their English program somewhere between 30 and 50 PhD candidates every single year, because they have all of these sections of Comp 1 and Comp 2 that they have to have somebody to teach. And Comp 1 and Comp 2, unlike American National Government, they hire still a lot of PhD candidates in American National Government because you have a lot of students. But Comp 1 and Comp 2 are obviously, what are the grades based on? Unlike American National Government, where you can have 4 exams that are multiple choice, that historically you've graded with a Scantron machine, or now it's graded automatically online on some kind of learning management system. Comp 1 and Comp 2, you can't do that with. You have to actually have somebody what? Grade the papers. And that takes time. So you can't have a class in an English course of 75 students, or the professor will never have time to grade the papers, right? So they admit these huge cohorts. If you admit 30 and only half of them, that's still 15. Marketing programs admit 1 a year or 2 a year. That just means there's a huge reduction in number. Lots of people out there retiring, and you have this, perfect storm and an ability to control the market. I tell you this because I think I got my job here at UCO when I wanted to come back, because my department chair and I both like horses. We both owned horses. I grew up with horses. She didn't grow up with horses, but she was fascinated, like lots of people are, with horses. And as soon as she had the ability to buy horses, she bought horses, right? She owns a couple of race horses, and she also competes in an event called Dressage, which I've competed in, and she runs dressage shows. I tell you all of this, and I know it seems like I'm on a tangent, as background, because who sponsors dressage shows? Anybody want to guess? Rolex. Rolex sponsors dressage shows. Why?
The horses like jumping over the-
Dressage is on the flat. That's called hunter jumper or jumper. There's two different kinds of events. And then there's eventing, which is a part of that. Rolex sponsors all of those. They'll sponsor dressage, they'll sponsor hunter jumper, they'll sponsor those kinds of events. Rolex doesn't sponsor NASCAR. Rolex doesn't sponsor rodeo. Why?
It's more like prestige.
It's prestige. Yeah, rodeo is viewed by most people as what? Yeah, it's a rowdy, it's not the, now this is not necessarily true, but I think the image still is that that's the poor man's sport of the horse world. Not really anymore, because if you want a good cutting horse or a good reining horse, things like those horses are also now hundreds of thousands of dollars. But the image of rodeo historically is that this is the working man's side of the horse industry. Dressage, hunter jumper, eventing, those are all things that are high dollar. They're participated in by people who are perceived as being, at least upper middle class to upper class. They're not sports that just anybody can do. And so if you're going to do this, and lots of people do it, I think again there has to be congruence between the event that you're sponsoring and the product that you're selling. Rolex sponsors tennis tournaments because again, although anybody can play tennis, it's actually remarkable to me that more people don't play tennis because you can play tennis fairly cheaply. You can find used rackets all day long at Goodwill, but it's perceived as being a more elite sport.
They sponsor like the classiest person on tour.
The classiest person.
Classiest
I've never even
Or
heard
like,
of
it's
the,
like tennis and golf. I
classes.
know like the Masters, I'm pretty sure.
Like he's just the
Lucio.
classy player.
okay.
He's like #1 in the world, and he gets like only Rolex.
I've never heard of the classiest player, but Rolex is not doing NASCAR. NASCAR is viewed as not, again, the crowd that Rolex wants to have. So there should be some congruence between these sponsorships and the type of person who purchases that. Trade oriented. It's targeted towards intermediaries, wholesalers, and retailers. So what you want to do is you want to get distribution for new products, particularly new consumer packaged goods, support your established brands, encourage display of your brands, and then build retail inventories. So if retailers have a huge inventory, they're going to push that product. How are they going to push that product? Well, if you go into a grocery store, think about how many times you see on the end caps and things like that, big, displays. So you go in during 4th of July, you're going to see lots of huge displays of things like Budweiser and Miller and things like that on these end caps because they're trying to push that product. They get the product at a discount. That's good for them because they use the same price maybe, or maybe they pass on part of the discount to the consumer, but they're getting a huge benefit, and they create and use space in order to push that product because they've got this inventory. You don't want to sit on inventory, you want it to move, right? Contests and incentives, the use of prizes to meet sales goals. So just like we have contests and sweepstakes for consumers, they do the same thing for the sales force. If you're the #1, one of my friends used to sell for 3M. She sold light cure brackets. So this was at the time very new technology. If you've had braces, which I had in the past, it took a long time when I got my braces, and I was, 11 or 12 when they put braces on me. It took a long time for an orthodontist to do a whole mouth of braces because they had to prep the tooth, and then they had to put this adhesive on the bracket, stick the bracket on, and then hold the bracket in place until it cured. 3M came out with this product that radically reduced the amount of time that it took to put on a full set of braces by using something called light cure. So they put it on. 3M is known for adhesives. You would shine ultraviolet light on the bracket and it would instantly cure the product to the tooth. And that's what my friend sold. So this was real new technology in the late 1980s. She was the #1 salesperson. She converted more dentists than anyone else in 3M to this product. And as a result, she got, and she took my mother because she wasn't married, she got a all expense paid 6-night, 7-day Caribbean cruise on what was at the time the largest cruise ship in the world. And so that was, a prize to get you to convert your dentists from using the old type of technology to the new. Trade allowances are discounts or deals used to encourage the stocking of your product. They include buying allowances, which is a price reduction for a fixed period. Promotional allowances, discounts for performing merchandising activities such as putting end caps in your stores or signage. And then slotting allowances. This is one that makes it very difficult for new developers of goods to oftentimes get into things like Walmart. If you want to get into Walmart, historically you had to go to Bentonville, right? And you have to get permission to put it in. That means that products like in our own state, I think the best barbecue sauce in the nation is Head Country, which is produced in Ponca City, Oklahoma. I remember when I was getting my PhD, I literally almost broke down and cried when I saw Head Country for sale. I used to have my mother send me bottles of Head Country to New Mexico so that I would have it when I was in my PhD program. They finally started carrying it about midway through my PhD program in the Walmart in Las Cruces, and I almost broke down and cried because it's like we finally get, they don't have good barbecue in New Mexico. I'm from New Mexico and I like good Mexican food, not good barbecue, because it's not what New Mexico's known for. We're, in Oklahoma, known for barbecue. If you ask what's one of the things, I think there are a couple of foods that you'd say are indicative of Oklahoma. Chicken fried steak is one of them, which people from New York don't understand, and barbecue. So to get on the shelves, consumer packaged goods will usually pay a slotting fee to get space. Offering display or point of purchase material, sales training programs. A lot of products other than things like cereal require some knowledge of the product, and so providing information and training to your sales force is a powerful incentive that producers can offer to get retailers and wholesalers to carry their product. And then trade shows. We used to sell a lot through trade show programming. The American Education Corporation, we go to education conferences, we'd have booths, and we would do trade shows, and that promoted our distributor network. They would get leads and generated from that, and we paid for the trade show. Cooperative advertising. So this is co-branding, where you engage in getting people to drive business to, for example, Tom Thumb or Walmart in exchange for, buying a certain product. So the cost of advertising is shared by more than one party, and that can be a big benefit to retailers. You have to coordinate all of this so that you're not being perceived as being disjointed by the consumer. It's important that all of this speak with one voice, and that the type of promotion that you do is congruent again with the product. Exclusive products like Rolex don't discount. You're never going to get a Rolex cheaper next year than you're going to get it this year. They go up year over year. They don't allow discounts. The fastest way to get your Rolex dealership yanked, which is what happened to Samuel Gordon Jewelers, is to start discounting Rolex. They don't ever want to be perceived as that. They don't want to be perceived as the off brand or the discount brand. So it has to be coordinated with your overall IMC platform in order to make sure that it is consistent and you're speaking with one voice and you're not getting off message. I'm out of time, so if you got ducks, come see me. I will give you points, and I will see you next Thursday. There, right, and I'll stop the live stream. And if you send me a text message, I will also do that right now.
Not just for example.